So unfortunately, because of postal strikes and a few other reasons, we will not be able to take the MR2 on the Nc500. So we will be taking the very wonderful K11 Micra. But before we take it, we must service it. So let's go over that. So we're just going to start with a little air filter change. That one there's already off. Just unclip that. There we go. Pop that in there. Done. Air filter change complete. So step one of removing the spark plugs is just to remove these 4 little bolts. And then we're just gonna, I like to unplug the coil packs from these just to avoid stressing the wires, and then just lift those all out. You can keep them in order if you like. 1, 2, 3, 4, easy enough. And then we're just going to lift out the spark plugs. Now we'll just go ahead and put in our new spark plugs. Our 4th one. So the spark plugs for this engine are 20 to 29 Newton meters. So I've gone with the conservative 22, 23. And what you want to be careful of is when you're tightening it, you don't want to do this with your spark plug socket. You want to try and keep it square. So you want to try and put some pressure on top, hold it square, and then tighten. That's it. There we go. That's all torqued down, so now we can just pop back in our coil packs. So now that we've done the oil filter, the air filter we've done, and now we've done the spark plugs, now we're going to do the oil filter and the oil. So to start that process, we're just gonna remove this so that the air can get through the engine and let the oil drain out a little bit easier. So just remove that. It's a good reminder that you've not got any oil in the engine, and then just pull up your dipstick tube and just leave that off to the side. Just leave the little end of it inside the dipstick tube just so that any excess oil will drain out down into the sump. So the sump plug on this is a 14mm, which is nice and easy. And you do not need to jack up the vehicle to be able to get to it. You can just reach underneath with your trusty friend. It's getting some good sniff there. And just get your spanner on that. Just break that loose. In fact, some of them may be tighter than others, but I'm going to try and demonstrate just breaking that loose for you now. This is much tougher on the floor filming it, but there we go. So there we go. Bring your little drain pan over, and then you want to try and like just press in as you wind that bolt out before you let the oil drain out. And then there you go. Let that drain out into your little bucket. So you can see just down here, see this little black part here which says BLPRI. It's basically Blueprint. That's the brand of filter that's on there. That is the location of the oil filter on this engine. It's hard to focus. There we go. So that is the location of it, and you can reach down here and get your hand down underneath here and get your hand to it, but it is very, very difficult, and you will cut your hands in the process, especially if you have air conditioning like I do. This is the air conditioning pipe. If you don't have air conditioning, this could actually be a really, really easy way to not even have to jack up the car. However, what I will say, the wheel is not that far off the ground. This is basically just the difference between parking this one wheel up on a curb on the street. If you were to park one wheel up on the curb, you would easily be able to slide underneath and break that loose by hand. Well, sometimes they don't always come loose by hand, but if they've been done by a normal person and not by a gorilla, they should come loose by hand. This one here has been pretty easy, I think, because I did this last, so I totally suspect it will come off quite easily by hand. So we'll just wind that off, pop on the new one, pop some oil in it, and away we go. That's it, service done. So I think it's important to document that even though you can see there's like a slight weeping from the sump gasket, there's clearly nothing from the oil filter. And yet, however, look at that, dead easy. You don't need to over tighten these. They seal really, really well, whether you over tighten them or not. And that's what it's all about, just making life easy for yourself. If you over tighten it, next time you come to get it off, it's going to be a pain in the backside. And you won't have saved yourself any problems. It won't leak, whether you tighten it slightly or a lot. That's it. Let that down into there, let that drain out. And then we'll just pop our new filter on. And there we go. It's all very tight here. I'm sorry getting a big shot of my arm, but I'm trying to do this kind of from where you can see it. If you could literally slide underneath the car with just your head and just about squeeze your arm under there, this is pretty much what you'll see. Not much else. Let's give that a good... Okay, that should do. Just hand tight is fine for these. And now we're gonna let this drain out a little bit more and then pop the sump plug back in with the new washer and fill it up with oil, and away we go. So this drain plug is very important, especially this washer. Now if this looks almost indistinguishable, like it has just become one gasket, it is definitely overcrushed and you should definitely not use it. If you can see that it has some volume to it like this, then the chances are that you may safely reuse it once, possibly twice, but don't continue to reuse it. That would be a bad idea. You'll end up with an oil leak. Nobody wants that, especially not after an oil change. So the torque spec for this is 29 to 39 Newton meters. I would recommend starting at the low end. I would probably torque it up to 20 if it was brand new, and then let it sit for a second. Maybe like sort of just count to 10 or something, and then torque it up to 29. This is the second time that I've used this, and I've done this many times, so I know quite safely I can tighten this up to about 32 and it will seal 100%. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go underneath there, get this back in, torque this back up, and this is a 14mm hex nut on this. So the next thing that you want to do is just fill it up with 3.1 litres of 5W or 10W, well, 5W30 or 10W40, either ASEA, that's ACEA, A3, or SJ. That's the API specification. And that's the oil that you really want to fill these up with. And pop some of that in there and away we go. Yes, and of course it wouldn't be Ireland if it didn't rain at some point during any job, so enjoy that. So what you really want to watch out for after doing any oil change is you just want to watch out for the oil light. That one just there in the bottom over here. So we just want to watch that for, just turn off the windscreen wipers. So we just want to watch that for like a couple of seconds, and it should go off at least within 3 or 4 seconds. If it stays on any longer than that, just try to count it. So we'll go to ignition now, and then 1, 2, 3. See there, pretty much between 2 and 3. That's not too bad. If it stays on for like 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds, there's something not quite right there. So just going to let it run for a few seconds, let it acclimatise to the new spark plugs, which will change the air-fuel ratio because they are cleaner. The engine will just settle slightly, you will hear that, and you'll also hear it settle after the oil light goes out when it reaches full oil pressure after it's been drained. So we're just going to leave it on for a couple of seconds, and then we'll I just like to give it just a couple of gentle revs. Don't like rev the nuts off it, but just trying to there we go. A little bit of load. That's what we're trying to replicate there. And now we're just going to let it settle, check the oil level, top it up if we need to, and that's it. Service done. Now, I do believe that we live in a world where people expect people to know things that they think that they should know without anybody actually telling them. So you see these little dots in between? That is the minimum to maximum mark here. So what we're going to do, we'll just pop the dipstick tube back in there, down there. See that little hole? Just down there. So we'll pop that down there, make sure it goes all the way down, and then we'll pull it out, and then we can see that our oil, is at the maximum mark there, so that's good. So we know that we're at the maximum. Very good. And now we're ready just to obviously put the oil cap back in. You should have done that before you started it, by the way. Don't leave the funnel in there and start the engine. So now we're just basically ready to drive it. That's it, done, serviced. Everything is finished. We are good to go. I'm definitely not a vlogger, so don't expect anything special, but there will be some footage of the Nc500 coming soon.